still Daybreak Africa. If you just tuned in, reaching you here from our studios in the city, I'm EZEKIEL OGAR. Now, the word restructuring has been one word used very often by Nigerian politicians. It's more like the word has been bastardized already. It's more like every 4 years they come with the word restructuring, and when they come into office, they actually leave it the same way, and it's more like they do little or nothing at all when it comes to restructuring. But nonetheless, this one we'll be talking on economic development, analyzing possible means to restructuring Nigeria economic. And with us in the house is Barrister MACNEZER. FASEHUN. Welcome on Daybreak Africa, sir.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Well, it's quite interesting to know that Nigeria has gone through many hurdles when it comes to the economic aspect of it, and definitely this is no news to anybody. However, there have been different solutions that have been preferred by professionals and even members of more like citizens of the country to see to it that the economic situation of Nigeria would be changed. But unfortunately, we still find ourselves in this particular situation. So what do you have to say so far concerning Nigeria economy and its downfall?
Well, if I am not too pessimistic or downright too hard on Nigeria, Nigeria had the third world country had never been developing, and sadly Nigeria happened to be one of them. We had never really been a developing nation, because when we talk about development, we talk about projection. You're able to identify where you are, and then you look forward to your projection, what you intend to do with yourself or with your situation, and then you begin to step forward. But a situation in which your comportment, your attitude to life, your disposition doesn't show that you even know where you were in the first place, because it's a big problem for somebody that has an ailment not to know that he has the ailment. And people who fought for independence in Nigeria, a couple of young men who got together to be referred to as nationalists in Africa, precisely the Abat-Lutulis, the Abat-Lutulis, Obafemi Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Herbert Macaulay, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere. Those guys knew where they were, and they knew what they wanted for their nations. But we are talking of a generation that is sterile, intellectually sterile, barren. We don't have an idea of where we are really, because when you don't know where you are, you won't know exactly where what to do about it. We began to experience what is known as the commercial discovery quantity of petroleum in 1960, in the 1969 precisely. That's when we began to see that, okay, this place is, we have a large quantum of petroleum that we could mine and begin to market. But incidentally, those to whom, the generation to whom that quantum of resources were bequeathed didn't seem to know what to do as at that time, because look at General Yakubu Gowon, for instance, in the 70s when he was in government, and he traveled out of the country, and he was asked about the economic condition of Nigeria, and he said the problem Nigeria had was not money, but how to spend money. And it shows that I mean, the developed countries could see a lot of intellectual vacuity in us that they don't really know, they are not really prepared for it, really. They weren't prepared for it. And so I had always thought that before a nation or a group of people can say that they want to develop, they must be ideologically driven. They must know that this is, crop of military guys who took over government in 1967, 1966, 1967, etc. Look at their age. Most of them 27, most of them 30, 31. They didn't know they didn't have an idea of what a nation state should look like. The only few people who seem to know where they were at that time, maybe the Obafemi Awolowos, maybe the Nnamdi Azikiwe, maybe the Tafawa Balewa, they were prepared, ideologically prepared, intellectually prepared. And I always talk about the French philosopher, who says that for there to be an ideology, it defines ideology as the science of ideas, and that for there to be an ideology, there must be intellectual presence, meaning that people must be able to interrogate themselves, interrogate their reality, and exactly find out where to go from there. The Milesians, who were philosophers who grew up in the island of Ionia, people started talking, they were speculating about history, about human being, how they came to this planet, and science. You know, so there was movement from mythology to reality to find out exactly what is the ultimate reality. And it was in the process of interrogating that man migrated from mythology to philosophy to science. And they were able to say that, okay, this is what the planet is like, so what do we do with the planet? But where you have a group of people coming together and they just found themselves in a place that they don't even know how they got there, and they never ever try to interrogate to find out exactly why they got there. You will see that politically, in Africa today, what we experience, we are still experiencing coup in the 21st century. So what we are experiencing here is not ideologically founded or giving birth to.
Well, when you bring it down to Nigeria,
yes,
I mean, we practice democracy. You know, people get elected, you know, it's democratic. So saying we have no ideology as a nation, it's quite hard, it's quite questioning. How do you mean ideology as a nation in Nigeria? Ideology
as a nation in Nigeria means that we should be able to know where we are. You were born a couple of years ago. By now, you ought to have acquired education. By now, you ought to have planned, I mean, by the time you are 35, 40, in fact, as a lawyer, it is expected of you by 35 that you have acquired, you have a car, you have a house, you have an apartment, you have a radio, you have a TV, and very, very likely you will have been married in the early 30s or so, and so you should be expected to be able to write a will when we are talking about succession, who is likely going to succeed you about that age. But where a nation doesn't have, I mean, that's why you just, as we were introducing this program, you were talking about restructuring. Some people will go and come and they will do nothing. They didn't know anything about what they wanted to do. They never did. They never had an idea. That is why a president can be sworn in today and said, subsidy goes away. It could be an economic idea that he had been nursing. But how about the information? How about passing the information to the audience? What would be the consequence? You understand? So it's not just enough. I contested the election to go to National Assembly in 2007 in Lagos, in the same constituency with Femi Gbajabiamila. Tunde Fashola was going for governorship, and the political class was invited to Shangisha, that's office of the State Security Service, were to discuss politics and security in Lagos. And we're asking us questions about what we intend to do about security and in Lagos as we are contesting for election. In the meantime, some of us, I mean, in the process, you were required to go to Birel Avenue. Birel Avenue is where you have LASIEC, Lagos State Independent Electoral Commission, to come for what they call certificate verification. I went for my certificate from primary school in Oboto, on your way to Akure here, to, you know, all the secondary school. I went to Ondo Grammar School, etc., etc. I went there to present my degrees. Oh, you have first degree. Said, how many degrees do you have original? Some of them said, Oga, we haven't seen people coming like this. Hardly will people come and present their certificates. You know? And I said, at least 2 or 3 of those certificates are from University of Lagos, which is just behind you, so you can find out. Now, what I'm saying is that for the political class to emerge, they must have an idea of what they want to go and do there. People go to government, people go into politics as happenstances. They never really had an idea. That's why what we are practicing in Nigeria, and ipso facto in some sub-regions in Nigeria, is brigandage.
Well, recently our president came out to address Nigerians,
yes,
giving so many promises and
yes,
even giving out figures, yes, as to what they plan to do with
yes,
some sectors in Nigeria.
Yes.
So what do you think about the address, what he said and what he promised?
Well, that's why I said that the political class remains happenstances. They occur. You understand what I'm saying? Our president, current president, well, of all those people contested, you may say that that is the best out of the three. It depends on your idea and understanding and analysis. But the truth of the matter is that he was coming from a political party that promised change in Nigeria and said that this is what we are going to do when we go there. We had a political party whom they accused of having squandered Nigerian fortune for 16 years. And so they were coming for change. The mantra was coming to change Nigeria for the better. But a situation in which 8 years is gone already, nothing happened. Another 8 years is just what we are getting into. We are not likely going to go anywhere. So for people like us who had the opportunity to grow up at a time Nigeria was emerging as a state, we had we experienced what flag independence was like. We experienced people like Chief Obafemi Awolowo in Western region. And today some people say that one of the reasons why Harold Macmillan said in British Parliament that he was not the right kind of person they wanted as Prime Minister of Nigeria was because the man said he had a brain to rule America and Britain put together. That was a guy you could sit down and read that this is a political person, it's a political class indeed. Are you with me? So if UPN, if Action Group had metamorphosed into UPN, etc., you are supposed to be seeing that there's a trend of politics going on. It's not somebody comes here today, I read them when they are campaigning, they read out figures, this is what we want to do, this is what we are going to do, a lot of them, you know. It shows that Nigeria, that's why I said that we didn't know where we were. Because Nigeria, we thought we were petrodollar rich, but we're never petrodollar rich. Because if you go to those who are economic philosophers, at least from 1766 to 1834, Thomas Robert Malthus, the economist, English economist, who says that he talks about population. His population theory is that population will go, you know, geometrically, and food supply is linear. And because food supply is linear, what will happen is that eventually population will be forced to reduce because there will be war, there will be disease, there will be famine. Now, none of this political class can you call and say, okay, how many of Malthus have you read? You want to become president of Nigeria? How many of Malthus? How many of those things have you imbibed? At the master's degree, when I was doing master's, my professor gave me an assignment. He said, MACNEZER, I said, go and write something on cultural materialism. And he just said, go and write cultural materialism. I needed to wangle my way to find out how to get that topic out. And then I had to go to Achebe's Arrow of God, for instance. And I found out that, well, there was a society that had, you know, that had a standard form by which they run their economy. And Africans, all African nations like that, they all have that peculiar, in Yoruba land around Ondo State here, you have your market every 9 days or something like that. There was concrete development as per what you could do, actuality. But eventually, the class that, the industrial class emerged from there after post-colonialism, maybe Professor Ebon Clark said that now, the industrialists at Ijebu, and all that. People are into industry, they are into supplying rubber for Michelin to produce tires and all that. How many of us here, how many of what we are wearing here are produced in Nigeria or in Africa? They're brought from the US. To the extent that in the 21st century, we still have to depend for America to supply with shoes, with bags, with handkerchiefs, with everything. To that extent, it's not a developing nation. So issue of restructuring, issue of saying that we're going to restructure Nigeria, we want to talk about, you know, those are as political, whatever. As far as I'm concerned, we're not anywhere.
So at this point, say in a country with the concentration of power and resources at the center, the lack of autonomy for states, and the feel of marginalization, you know, actually by a good segment of people in the country, how can the term restructure be best expressed in Nigeria? Well,
to all intent and purpose, the current president has taken some steps in what he announced when he came into power. Namely, the constitution, the schedule of the constitution has the exclusive lists, has the concurrent, and then there's the subsidiary list. Meaning that there are areas in which only federal government can legislate. Power supply, for instance, water supply, for instance. You understand? So I don't know what informed our taking those things to the central. When, as at the time, we were having water supply in Ondo, we are in Ondo City here, and when it's where they used to put, you know, West Water Corporation would work on the water from the natural resources you get there, maybe Oshun, maybe Owena, whatever, and then, you know, you produce water supply even to the villages. There were taps in the villages, you know, but there was a tap there, very close to my grandmother's house, where you could go fetch portable water. So at what point did we be, you know, did the problem really started that we want to say, okay, we are no longer into that? All those things went away. By the time we came back from the university, it's like reading W.E.B. Yeats. We return to our places here, no longer at this, everything is upside down, everything is topsy-turvy. So now that President Tinubu has said that he wants us to go and legislate on power at the regional level, that is the meaning of restructuring. Take part of those exclusive legislatively, take it to concurrent, and take it to residual, really. Make local government to be able to get their own power, get their own water. Tax people and let them pay. The hospital road in Ondo, where I drive almost every day, you see potholes there. How many industries are there? How many secondary schools are there? How many shops are there? How can we tax those shops and make the money that is coming from that place to fix that road? That is restructuring. But a situation in which we had federal allocation coming through the state. So when you talk about separation of powers in democracy, there is what I define as the vertical horizontal power, vertical power. What did I just mention now? Separation of power, and there's also horizontal separation of powers. Horizontal separation of powers is there's the federal government, there's the state, there's the local government. Vertical is where there is a relationship between the federal government through the state to the local government. So the money that is coming from the federal government, there should be no intermediary thing between questa between the federal government and the local government. But of course, we know since the military came to power, allocation that had been coming to local government had always come through the state governors. And so where there is no direct fiscal relationship between the local government and the federal government, the money disappears at the state level. That's why we are here. So issue of economic development is about what are the people producing. That's why the Marxian theory of economics says that the person who controls the means of production should control the mentality, the philosophy of the people. The person. Adeola Dutola, yes, he was the one producing rubber, you know, for the manufacture of tire. People, industrialists, people like that class of industrialists, they should control the thinking, the philosophy of the people. So that where Awolowo came to power, he said there wasn't any book written by Plato that Awolowo didn't write his own version. The Republic.
Do you think the federal actually tend to amass just so much power, and it's not exactly helping the nation? Yeah,
that happened when the military came out with their unitary decree of 1967.
Even while talking, make it seem as if it's still the same that's going on.
Of course, that's exactly what they bathed. We all know that the military class gave birth to the political class, and that's why they could. Up till now, I mean, a military man just left. Buhari just left. He had always been there. The Obasanjos were there. The Babangidas were there. You understand? At no point did we really have people who were ideologically driven. Take, for instance, in Nigeria today, in our reality today, TED Fund is giving money. I was driving past ADME yesterday and I saw a structure around ADME University of Education, and I said, that must have been constructed by TED Fund. And of course, when I got there, I saw it's TED Fund. But go to Afe Babalola University and see what a senior advocate of Nigeria, who is a lawyer, who came from the village, who believe in the village thing. Because some philosophers like my uncle, Professor Lafe, former member of Governing Council of Cornell University, he talks about abulocentrism, meaning that Africa is essentially an agrarian society. We are not industrial. So we should go back to the village. And of course, even from the romantic theory of literature from the beginning, when characters migrate from the rural area to the urban area, they ended up becoming a new entity.
At some point, I don't know if I'm getting you wrong, but it's more like you feel we are not capable of ruling ourselves. We are not capable of administrating.
We haven't demonstrated that we are capable.
It's one thing to demonstrate, but it's another thing to make you feel as if we have total inability to do so.
Yes.
Now, you know, we could be forced with certain irregularities here and there, you know, people coming in and they're not exactly doing what they promised.
Yes.
But saying we are incapable as a nation is
Yes.
quite an accusation, you know, saying...
Yes, that's why I said I took time to apologize that my words could be weighty when I'm talking about my country, because I feel that I go to America, I go to everywhere, and I see how things happen.
Is this inability peculiar to just Nigeria, or are we going to maybe enlarge it down to Africa generally?
Well, I don't want to leave the log in my eyes and start speculating on the speck in somebody else's side. I want to talk about Nigeria and how it affects me. This is a nation that has I haven't seen any projection regarding population control, regarding management of roads. How many vehicles are being driven? You understand? So if you are asking the president to come back with come down from 650 or 600 naira per liter, and they are comparing that with Dubai and US, and they say okay, the amount of money you buy per liter in the US and Dubai is just about 670 or 7 something. So Nigeria have no reason to complain. The question is that what was the projection of our past leaders for 2023? What was their projection? Just to get there and then sit down after 4 years, you throw parties, enjoy yourself, buy the best of cars. As a consumer nation, not productive nation. We haven't. We had oil boom. What did the oil boom manufacture? All the industries. We once had a Nigerian Romanian wood industry in Ondo. It's packed up. Nigerian Premier Metal in Akure. I was one of the lawyers who went there to take delivery of the liquidation. Do you understand? So the question therefore is that as a nation, how can we be talking about economic development?
Now, as a nation, I know we have our difficulties. Like I said, politicians will always come and give out words, especially the word restructuring has been totally versatile, as I said it earlier. Now, what can you, as a person, actually pinpoint to be the exact limiting factor for this nation?
You know, there are 3 ways by which you measure the development of a nation. I've always said that on air: the gross domestic product, life expectancy, and literacy level. People need to be educated to know that building a nation is not just waking up from your dreamer.
So in essence, illiteracy is our issue.
It's an issue. It's an issue. It's an issue.
But we have Nigerians educated.
Educated Nigerians.
High numbers of educated Nigerians.
Yeah, and the Europeans will tell you that there's a difference between an educated folk and a functional illiterate. Because where your education does not apply, it doesn't matter, it doesn't produce anything, you become a functional illiterate. Even if you are educated, you are literate. You could read and write. Do you understand? What have you done with the education? What you go to school, you acquire education. So what problem are you able to solve? Ask some people. I mean, a cousin of mine sent a message to me a little while ago and said, bros, my daughter has now graduated. He said he had BSc in economics. I said, what was the title of the project? I'd like to know the name of the university and the title of the project. Till today, the guy has not brought the title of he said he forgot the title in the book in Abuja. The thesis she wrote, she was supposed to have written. Barely 3 months, she has forgotten the title of the project. So decadence is in the system. Nobody writes any project. If I meet any of my students and say, what are you writing on? What level are you? 400 level. You are graduating in mass comm or political science. So what is the title of your thesis? You must be discussing it with me extempore. That is education. That is then we are educated, because he did the research. He conducted the research. Up to today, as at the time I was in Lagos University and I was supervising students, and somebody will say that, Mr. FASEHUN, how come your students are scoring high? I said, because I taught it. And I can bring my project to the class and say, the person who supervised this project is Nana Wilson Tego, a Ghanaian woman in Nigeria at that time. Where is she now? She's a professor of West Indian Literature and University of Missouri, Kansas City. She supervised this project. So go and look at her profile. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I can discuss my project with you right here, my first degree, second degree, my LLB, etc. Do you understand? That shows that we're actualizing that. But a situation in which the graduate himself, the lecturer himself will say that the graduate is unemployable. So the issue of degree, BSc, MSc, PhD, that's not what we are talking about education. We're talking about what can you do? How do you apply your knowledge? When you are employed to work in an office, what is the quantum of your contribution as per the knowledge you acquired to that company? So much so that it's expected that the entrepreneur who put down the money to run the business should be able to make, like, if it's making like about 800, about 100 naira, maybe 25 naira will be your salary, meaning that you are supposed to contribute like maybe 25%. You know, you are supposed to the payment, the wages is going to pay you is supposed to be about 25% of what is earning as an entrepreneur. That makes sense for him to continue in the business. So these are the things that we really need to, and politicians must be sensitive to that. That people who are driven by nationalistic and patriotic spirit are the people who are supposed to be in politics. People like Julius Nyerere, for instance, who was president of Tanzania. When he was the president of Tanzania, he was referred to as a teacher because he translated William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar and Macbeth into Swahili. He had a track record about this education. My idea of being a commissioner, for instance, if anybody wants to give me a minister, is that even while I'm in the office, I'll be going around schools to teach. Walk into a class and see what the teacher is teaching, what the principal is talking about, what the lecturers are teaching. I want to be interested.
True to what you said about education being our problem right here in Nigeria, and even amongst our leaders, we could see that so many people have actually come out to write books to prefer solutions to our economic problems. And even recently, Dr. Segun Aganga came out for a book launch, of which he titled Reclaiming the Jewel of Africa. Now, we had two of our former presidents in person of President Goodluck Jonathan at the time, and also Olusegun Obasanjo, who made certain claims about Nigeria economy and also gave solutions as regards what could be done to help the country. Now, do we now say at this point that probably the set of people who we have in government are the uneducated ones, and probably the younger ones could actually prefer solutions, or it's just affecting the entire nation as a whole?
Well, like how many of those books were read by Nigerians? It's not just about writing; it's about reading them. Is that not so? The reason you do public presentation of books is because you want people to read them. Those of us who were into arts column when I was into print media were reviewing books. Arts review. We review books. We review plays, drama, cultural things. How many, if we are talking about Achebe's Things Fall Apart as a major testament in our migration from anthropological colonialism to the present, how many Nigerians have read it? How many of our leaders in government have read books? Well, I can say that when I was leaving my master's degree class at the University of Lagos, my lecturer said something about when he was writing a letter for me to take and get a job. He said that he has read wide. And that's an African author, major African author. Are you with me? How many of us are really reading? How many of our leaders are reading? How many of them how many have read Malthusian theory of economics, of population? You will notice that for Isoludo, who made a first class in economics to be the central bank governor, his attitude to banking was different. His attitude to banking was cultural, was that we have to pull out or get out of this place very quickly, because that's what he had been researching in all his life. Do you understand? So when we take time to examine ourselves, so education now is not just about acquiring certificate or going to school. It's about sitting down to examine ourselves. Where were we? How come there's no water, no pipe-borne water getting into houses? School fees now is nothing to write. I mean, it's out of the reach of it. So what we are actually migrating to, we migrated from paying school fees in pre-Awolowo days. Now we are going back to paying through our nose to get education. America will, you give back to an American child, the parents are responsible up to KG level. When the baby is migrating from KG to primary school, okay, American government takes over. And then from that till the person graduates from secondary school, from high school, they call it, and then gets into the university, there are infrastructure for you to get loan, scholarship, if you are very, very intelligent, to give you soft landing, and your parents give your parents soft landing. And even when you get to become American president, you still pay back the loan. The system is regulated. We know that, we've been there. Everybody knows it. What I'm saying now is it's not as if I'm the only person that have been to the US. Everybody, all Nigerians know. So, but what are we doing about making sure that, okay, this person has just been employed? If he sees his letter of employment, he's very happy that he will go to church or mosque and give thanks to God for getting a job. But the truth of the matter is that, have you considered, as a pastor ask you what's going to be your quantum of contribution to the job? How can you stand out? I mean, by the time I became the editor of a paper, I became the editor of Prime People magazine when I was 34 years old. My magazine was circulating 120 copies per week. I have gone through all the gamuts of journalism. I can sit down and package my paper from reportage to editing to finishing. I will do my layout, lay my pages, crop my pictures, use everything, and that still reflects in the way I keep my page on Facebook, because I give myself the visual of how the information is going to get to the audience. So the question therefore is that, in an economic environment where we find ourselves, have we asked ourselves as a nation, oh, I'm wearing this thing, is very beautiful. Most of the suits, that we wear, they were sent to us from the US. How can we change our fortune from being a consumer nation to a productive nation? I mean, one of my uncles was one of the in fact, the first academically chartered structural engineer in the whole of West Africa, engineer E.O. FASEHUN. All right, I can tell you, I had to sit him and say, what did you construct? He said he constructed the Obakan Road. They fly over from Djibouti to Yaba. Chemical engineering faculty at the University of Lagos. Most of the buildings of the University of Ibadan Teaching Hospital. And he and Professor Akima Bogunje were some of those people that designed Abuja. So you can see a nation that came out with, you understand what I'm saying? So this is where knowledge applies to development and economic development. Time was when we were leaving the university, for instance, in the mid-80s. We didn't have to go to America, because Nigerian university degree was rated as, if not better than, most of those things they're bringing from the US. So we could apply as a member of Technical Aid Corps to go and get teaching job in some African countries. This Nigeria was producing us at that time. But by the time you now went back, you now find out that things have really fallen apart. All right? So all these are indices of economic development. What are you programmed to? If I ask you, say you are going to the university, what are you studying? Okay, you study geology. At another time when you were given admission, you are given admission to not only do geology first degree, but to do renewable energy. Okay, geology, University of Ibadan, renewable energy in University of Glasgow. But now people are not talking about cloud engineering. You have to be able to fit into it in a space world. Are you with me? But here, vis-a-vis our population and the need for food, why we don't, since we didn't concentrate on food production, we are in a quagmire regarding fuel. And nobody is going to eat fuel. If I have to buy fuel in my car right now, I have to buy fuel. If I buy 5,000 naira worth of fuel inside my car, it's just going to be a quarter of Big Daddy Toyota. Do you understand? And in those days when Goodluck Jonathan, President Jonathan was in government, I will buy 5,000 naira worth of fuel in my car to take me to Lagos. Places I needed to go to, maybe Lagos University at Ojo Road, University of Lagos, Akoka. I will have done all those things. When I'm coming back to Ondo, that will need to buy fuel. Just a little while ago. But now here 5,000 naira is there. And then one rewire was telling me yesterday that something is wrong with my fuel pump. So between fuel pump and what I need to eat and the alaka that is going to sell me food and the bread, I really cannot plan my journey. I cannot plan what is going to happen in the next 2-3 years. The roads are not getting better. The car I'm driving was manufactured in 2003. I bought it in 2018, meaning 15 years after manufacture. But since it got here, and by the time it got here in 2000, that I bought it in 2018, I mean, it was a celebration gallon. What has happened to the car? So these are the things that we should sit down and think about. Not that I'm president, so, and there's a dinner somewhere, people are going agbada, whatever. Maybe somebody like Irere, for me, who comes with a French suit and then he's talking to us at the intellectual level, and we know that, man, you guys have to move forward. So writers like Nelson Mandela, who wrote Long Walk to Freedom, culturally he will tell you that, look, it is in that book that I know that in Africa there isn't anything like uncle, like auntie. Those categorization doesn't exist in Africa. It's either my brother or my sister. But when we begin to say is my cousin, is my nephew, it doesn't exist in Africa. It's in Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. Albert Lutuli wrote Let My People Go. Then go and read those writers from South Africa, from West Africa, literary studies, and showing us many definitions of tragedy that is seen to be more original than William Shakespeare altogether. So it's a nation where thinking is where we have to start from. How much do I have? Somebody is giving back to children very close to your house, and he doesn't have a visible job. If he comes to my house and I don't have enough money to give, so I don't have remorse about that. Because you can't just be going to it without thinking about the consequence. There must be consequence. And I used to tell folks around me that, look, it doesn't take any genius for a man to impregnate a woman, but what happens after that? What happened to you?
Well, since sorry to go to Ezekiel, but since we found ourselves in this hard situation,
yes,
how do we begin to get out of it? What is the first step that government should take?
Yes, the
right step.
Yes, the first thing is that, as Achebe said, that we must know where the rain began to beat us. We have to identify where did you miss it. If you're able to identify where you missed it, then you know exactly how to correct it. Your father sent you to US to read, to study, send you to some of the best schools there. You didn't come back with a degree. And you cannot continue like that. You have to do something about yourself so that you can influence your society. Everybody has to do something. So nation building is just not, it's a question of leadership. If you are lucky to have a visionary leader who could map out what you are likely going to do, what this place is going to be like. But I know that in my homeland here, in Ondo here, lots of us, there's hardly anybody, any home in this Ondo where I'm from, that doesn't have a sizable number of families based abroad. In US, in London, you enter bus in London, you see people speaking Ondo dialect. Washington DC, Maryland, New York, people are speaking Ondo everywhere. So we are highly migrated. Now the consequence is that in another generation, a lot of people are migrating from Ondo, and some other people are migrating inward. So that you have the indentured labor, people who come from other states. Osun State, for instance, has about 32 local governments. Ondo State has about 18 local governments. So whatever government, as it happened in our political leader here, Rama Mimiko, fixing, he and the KBC, Obakila Dejo is a medical doctor, Professor Akikube, the three of them medical doctors decide to establish this University of Medical Sciences. Now, the tendency, therefore, is that people who come to patronize to have their child born in those hospitals, where they had the latitude to pay for, delivery for not more than 500 naira at a time, Okada riders. But the question is that how many of the indigenous people are beneficiaries of that, so that we don't use the money. Osun State has about 32 local government or their reverse, and they don't have mineral resources to sustain the local government. So the tendency is therefore for some people to migrate somewhere. That is why restructuring that we have come to is very important. Produce what you have, manage your economy, manage your population. Anything that is beyond your capacity to sustain, don't go into it, and don't be too much of a Father Christmas for anybody. so that we can sit down and think. I mean, I was in America. I was traveling from New York to Chicago, and the woman was dropping at Toledo, and she asked me, where are you from? I said, I'm from Nigeria. The next thing she asked me, when are you going back? It wasn't funny a question, but I know that if my country were to be very, very good for me, it should be a place that the Americans should like to come to. And we have to recognize that we have to do something about that. For us to not to think that, okay, migrating to America is going to be the last solution. No, we have to fix our country.
Almost out of time, but a quick one. Many tend to express displeasure as regarding our constitution.
Yeah.
Now, how do you think our constitution has tended to limit us as a nation and limit our growth so far?
Well, that is why the issue of restructuring comes to the schedule. The schedule. You know, under the schedule, which is the last part of the constitution, you have the exclusive legislative list for the federal government, which is central government, the concurrent that the state can also legislate on. Then you have the residual, which is for the local government. Now, if we can handle that in our constitution, which this is exactly what Tinubu did on his first day in office. He didn't say that I'm restructuring. He said now everybody can go and generate power. So legislating on power has migrated from that of exclusive list of the federal government. You can look for a way of generating power in your local government and sort those things out. So those things are there. The idea of the king can do no wrong, as in section 308 of the Nigerian Constitution, which says that nobody to whom subsection 2 of this section applies shall have civil or criminal proceedings initiated or proceeded upon against that person. That is what we refer to as the immunity clause. All right. Well, for theories of law like the Smiths feel that in order to curb the influence of the overbearing interference of the meddlesome interloper and whatever, that we should allow people who are in government to be in government and only begin to interrogate them after they have left office so that they won't derail. But then that is a very brilliant idea. But it's also very important for us to know that political leaders who are in office, it is incumbent on them to foresee, to have what is known as foreseeability, to be able to determine how, when I leave this office, what's going to happen in 50 years as an imprimatur of my activity here in office. Those things, we should be able to define that. And it's only then. And when you do programs like this, you invite some of us little teachers somewhere or lawyers somewhere. You can come and contribute by educating, by informing, by making sure the society is well synthesized. And the media practitioners, the media as seen as the fourth estate of the realm, according to Abraham Lincoln. We have to be able to take government to task and hold them responsible, accountable to the people. These are the things you are doing, and these are the things that you are doing as media practitioners. And your contribution to knowledge, to civil growth, to economic growth, you really cannot quantify it. Maybe because I was a journalist. I had always been a journalist. The better part of my career, my life, I spent as a journalist before I became a teacher or a lawyer or whatever. So I feel that passionately, the media should be encouraged, should be supported. Our culture should be highlighted. I like everything behind your studio. We have to know that we have a role to play, not only to give back to children, but to give them identity, to give them sense of nationhood. Not that they go to America and then you get to New York, or you want to take a bus from maybe a particular station there, and some black people are asking, "Hey guy, can you give me a quarter?" Things like that. After slavery, after so many years of those experiences, Africa is supposed to be back here and be driving our economy beautifully.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thank you for your beautiful contribution so far. Well, this is where we'll be ending this episode of Daybreak Africa. Thank you once again for joining us right here in Ondo City. But this will be handing you over to our Lagos station that has a package prepared for you. Please stay tuned while I sign out to you again next time. I'm Angela DAKU.
Have a great day ahead. I remain EZEKIEL.